If not, step into the Wayback Machine with me and let's talk about on this day in history for a couple of minutes. In 1919, federal troops were called out to put down race riots in Chicago. Who says history doesn't repeat itself? In 1938, George Eastman first demonstrated his color motion picture process. On this date in 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Medicare bill. In 1975, Teamsters union boss Jimmy Hoffa disappeared. He was last seen coming out of a restaurant in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, a Detroit suburb. And finally, in 1988, Jordan's King Hussein dissolved Jordan's parliament and surrendered Jordan's claim to the territory on the West Bank back to the Palestine Liberation Organization. And that's it for history today. At this point, I'm going to mute the audio for everybody and introduce our speaker. And Dr. Feller, I'll have to have you unmute yourself when you get ready to speak. Let me get this done here real quick. Okay, so everybody is muted but me. And again, President Feller, I'll have to have you unmute yourself. Our speaker today is Dr. Scott Feller, the 17th president of my alma mater, Wabash College. He joined Wabash as a professor of chemistry in 1998, served as dean of the college from 2014 to 2020, and was unanimously elected president by the board of directors back in May. As an administrator at Wabash, Dr. Feller has served as department chair, division chair, and dean of the college. And over the course of his tenure, he's hired or conducted tenure or promotion reviews on over 80% of the current Wabash faculty. He's led efforts to add new majors in computer science, philosophy, politics, and economics, also known as PPE, and a number of interdisciplinary minors. So please join me in welcoming President Feller to Kiwanis.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here. Thank you for that nice introduction. I suspect only David Pauly understands quite how much work it was to do the tenure review for 80% of our existing faculty right now. But this was not my intended path. I came here to teach chemistry, and I do love that. I wound up serving as dean for the last 6 years under Greg Hess, and I really liked that. But I've been telling people, I spent the last few years of my life telling headhunters I didn't want to be a college president. And then it turned out I did want to be the college president of Wabash College. So this is it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for me at the only place that I would have taken on this crazy job. But, I love this college a lot. It's done a lot for my family, for me. And of course, I love this Crawfordsville community. So I thought I'd give a couple updates about things that are at the college, and then, we'll tell you a little bit about how we're planning to reopen our college. A week from tomorrow, freshman students arrive. So we're in the midst of it. And then I'd be glad to answer some questions. Let me start with the things that are going really well. If you've driven down Grant Street lately, it's beautiful. The city has finished paving Grant Street. They have completed the trail, the portion of the trail that runs from downtown out to what eventually will be the beginning of the rail trail. And if you need a place to take a walk, I definitely recommend Grand Avenue right now. We're just so happy to have the city government as our partner there. And then if you want to turn on that walk and walk down Jennison Street, you'll see an amazing football stadium. So yeah, the good news is everything's going great on the stadium. It's going to be ready to play football. The not so good news is we're not going to be ready to play football, but the stadium is beautiful. I hope you all come when we have games. If you'd been in our stadium before, I think I think we've gone from something like 3 women's restrooms to 40. Okay, it's amazing transformation. It's with handicapped accessibility, beautiful seats. And what you'll see is that one of the best things that we did in building that stadium was actually to tear something down. We tore down the visitors' seats. There were, a big, ugly concrete structure between the home seats and the chapel, and we're not replacing that. And so now you have really a beautiful view of our chapel. So you also can see the stadium when you walk around the college mall. So we're really happy about the transformation of the physical campus. But we are coming into what's going to be, an unusual semester. I certainly hope this is a one-time event that we have to live through a semester under these conditions. But we think we have a plan that brings back our students for the experience they need while maintaining the safety of our students, our faculty and staff, and our local community. The best way to describe what we're trying to do is to think of Wabash as its own community or its own state even. The things that we have to do are the same things that any public health agency has to do. You've got to have a plan for testing. So all of our students are actually being tested for COVID-19 before they return to campus. We'll test anyone showing any signs of symptoms during the semester, and we'll do random surveillance testing. You have to be able to isolate anyone with COVID-19 so they don't spread it around. So the former home of Bill and Jeannie Hayes on our campus is our isolation facility. So that's where any student who tests positive will spend his time. Ideally, the student will go home. Most of our people are within a few hours drive. We think it'll be more comfortable and the family will feel better. But if that's not feasible, we'll keep them at our place. So you got to be able to test. You got to be able to isolate. You have to be able to do contact tracing. This is a term everybody hears about. This is one of the places where we have it way easier than the Montgomery County Health Department, right? I know where everybody lives. I know where everybody eats. I know where their classes are. I know what clubs they are, what teams they are on. So we have a very good ability to trace down people's contacts. And as we test any potential student, we're going to take down their list of contacts over the previous 48 hours. So if the positive tests come in, boom, we'll do our own contact tracing. It'll be backed up by the state of Indiana. Every positive test that happens at the Wabash College campus does get reported to the Montgomery County Health Department and the Indiana State Department of Health, and they'll do their own. But we think we're going to be days and days ahead of them, and we think that we will be thorough. The other piece that every community has to work on is changing people's individual behaviors, all right? This is probably the hard part. Everything else I can write down a flow chart for. The rest of it, I got to convince people to do the responsible thing. But, again, what we're doing, nothing different from the messages that you're hearing. Physical distancing, wear a mask. This is tough for a young man. Proper hygiene, hand washing, and avoiding large groups. Avoiding large groups, that's hard for all young people. But we're trying to set the campus up so that all those things will happen. The whole campus got dismantled this summer. Every classroom has been rearranged with the chairs 6 feet apart. That means we lost about 60% of the capacity of our teaching spaces. The good news is we've been overbuilding for nearly 200 years at Wabash College. And so even with all the seats that we've lost, every class has a classroom, which is, if you'd asked me 2 months ago if that was possible, I would have had my doubts. Some classes will be in non-traditional spots. The ball theater will be a classroom. The Salter Hall will be a classroom. The college chapel will be a classroom. There's even a couple classes down in the gym, and you'll see some classes outdoors. But the bottom line is everybody has a classroom. It's just that a classroom that was built for 30 now holds 12, and that required a lot of rearrangement. But we've done all the measurements. The chairs have been removed. We're pretty well set. Dining, same thing. There are no tables and chairs in our dining hall. The Spark Center is empty. Every space that was for dining, for students to sit, is now a food distribution center. So where there used to be one line that you stood in to get your lunch and sit down, now there's 5 lines for every one line that we had previous. It's all grab and go. Every meal, grab and go. We're setting up tents outdoors where people can eat. The outdoors is a much better place to congregate and eat because you're going to have to eat with your mask off. So we want that happening outside where there's maximum ventilation. And just like all of us who kind of gotten used to getting some food to go, they'll take it home. They'll take it back to their living unit. They'll find a place under a tree. But these are the kinds of things we've done. We've been working a lot for the last week, and it'll continue all of next week to put together all of the housing units in a safe way. This is tricky. Wabash men historically, like to put about 4 bunk beds together in a tiny room, and then they'd leave maybe the 2 rooms next to them empty, and maybe one had a lot of really disgusting couches. Others might have had a video game system. Well, so we just had to take everything out. Every room was dismantled. But the good news is, kind of like the classrooms, once you take apart the bunks and you put them in all the various rooms we have in both the residence halls and the fraternities, there's actually plenty of space. The Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, they give us guidance on how to space the beds. We marked out on all these rooms where to put the beds according to Johns Hopkins. And even though Johns Hopkins says you can't have any bunk beds and you can't have a cold dorm, once we laid it all out, we actually gained 50 beds. So, I think a lot of people thought we were going to lose 25% of our housing stock. We actually gained about 5%. So we can handle the students who are coming back, because we've made a lot of changes to the physical plant around campus. Everything's going to look different. There's signs everywhere. Got to go up this stair and down another stair. Limits on the number of people who can sit at a particular spot. But a ton of planning that really began in earnest around mid-April has gotten us to this place. So, we feel pretty good that we can provide a quality education. The classes will be different. A fraction of the classes will be virtual. So something like this Zoom classroom. We've got some international students who faced either visa or travel restrictions that kept them from returning to Crawfordsville. We'll teach those students remotely. We also have some students with underlying health conditions that it just doesn't make sense to bring them back to a campus. So we'll teach them remotely. Most of the classes will be some mixture of face-to-face and remote work. So, generally the faculty have evaluated every class and said, well, here's a class where I'm going to do it face-to-face every day. Here's another class, maybe we're going to meet face-to-face twice a week, and then one day a week we'll meet virtually, or we'll just do individual appointments, something like that. So we basically asked the faculty back in May, how do you want to teach their classes? And there's about 85 faculty. They each teach about 3 classes. I'd say we have around 250 answers of how they want to teach the class. And so we've spent a lot of the time this summer just trying to figure that out. Find everybody a classroom, but also, we've invested a lot in technology and tents, you name it. We're trying to cover as many different things. Because at the end of the day, the student and the faculty experience is going to depend on how comfortable both groups feel in the learning environment. And it's better to just let the faculty figure out what the best way is to teach. So, some schools have been a little more top down and said, this is the method we'll use. We're letting lots of different methods. I will say, we're all getting used to things like Zoom. If you talk to especially some of my younger faculty, I mean, they are using technologies that none of us have ever heard of to interact with our students. Some of them are using things that video gamers use to talk with each other while they're playing a video game, and they're using that for their classroom because it allows them to share all kinds of different materials. So there's a lot of creativity that's gone into this and a lot of energy. And at this point, I told the students 2 weeks ago in a chapel talk, we've done a lot of planning. We've set the campus up for success, but from here on out, it's pretty much the individual and collective actions of around 850 young men that determine if we have success. So if they adopt the personal behaviors that are needed, and I happen to think that they will, for one thing, the last thing they want to do is spend any more time in their parents' basement on remote learning. But I also think that we have developed a culture of personal responsibility over the years. Students don't choose Wabash, for the social life, and that's an advantage for us. So we'll bring the guys back. They want to be with each other. They want to see each other. And what I've basically explained to them is, if you want to be with each other, then you've got to all buy in to a program to keep everybody healthy. And they know they have to keep their faculty and staff healthy too. And so it's going to be interesting. I know there's lots of people who think this is the craziest thing they've ever heard of, to bring 850 young men back to live communally and to study. I guess I probably wouldn't have taken the job at Wabash if I didn't think that young people in general, and maybe young men in particular, were capable of much more than society expects of them nowadays. So I remain hopeful that this is the time that will show that a small community committed to a mission can accomplish something really fantastic. All goes well, we're going to be done at Thanksgiving. Everybody can go home to their family, and we'll see them again in January. But that's our plan. I guess everybody on this call can be watching it over the next 14 weeks. But I thought at this point, you probably have questions. I'd turn it over and ask people what questions are on their mind.
Scott, what do you do about teaching lab sciences? It seemed to me that when I took my limited lab science, the hands-on in biology with the frog, the hands-on was the most important part. How do you do that?
So we're going to run the labs. We have good space in the labs, just as we do in the classrooms. It's admitted that the laboratory sciences and the fine arts are the most severely impacted. In both cases, you're talking about a hands-on enterprise, and you can't get around it. And just like the classes, different labs are going to be run differently. I think there's some chemistry labs where they're split in the afternoon into two, and half the students come to the first half and half to the second half. So you reduce your density. And I know that's the way it is in organic chemistry. In organic chemistry, each student is going to have a full 6-foot hood to work with. Usually it would be a student and a lab partner. I did stop by the chemistry labs last week, and so some of it is they're pre-weighing out some of the chemicals so that the guys don't share the equipment or line up at a balance. And others are going to do things like, one group comes one week, another group comes another week, and in the alternate time they work on a virtual exercise, or they work on calculations or lab reports. So it's going to be customized. I know I spoke with one of our studio art faculty yesterday. And in a usual year, his thing would be to kind of go and hover over each student, as they worked on their art and talk with them. And he's rearranged the classroom so that all the stations are spread out, and then centrally will be his spot. And the students will bring their art up and set it between the two of them, and the two of them can have a chance to talk about that art, with a mask, socially distanced. It's hard to maybe imagine teaching and learning with a mask on. And back in June, I was terribly worried about this. And, we did invest in some testing of things like face shields that I, thought might be better. What we've found is that as we've come back to work over the last few weeks and started to work, that actually communicating with masks is not as bad as you think once you get used to it. It takes an adjustment period, but after that, it's really not as bad as you think.
Scott, what about weekend travel, students leaving to visit girlfriends, etc.?
Yes, so that's a piece of the behavioral modification the Montgomery County Health Department doesn't have to worry about as much as me. And, so I've laid this out, to the students early on and said, you're not going to, we can't have students going up to Purdue.
Right.
Let's say Purdue has a football game. We just can't have them in large crowds or visiting the Neon Cactus on Thursday evening.
Right.
But we also, students, young people, all of us need some social interaction. So, what I've said is, if, go and visit your friend and, meet at the Starbucks and sit outside, right, and have the conversation. I bet a lot of us are finding ways to have limited social interactions with people, and we try to, we do it in a safe, a socially distanced way. It seems like you could do it in Bridge, but maybe not. I think, we can find some ways, but it's going to be a big ask. I agree. It's a big ask. We have a group of 45 Wabash students that we call our care team. And so basically each of them is going to be assigned around 20 students. And these are basically peer educators. So we're going to use a peer network. The peer educators are led by Jill Rogers and Coach Olmstead. And we've actually had students working on public health messaging all summer that is made by students, for students, directed by students. So it's going to be a sacrifice. We won't put a bubble literally around the campus, but I'm asking people to use the bubble metaphor to describe what we're doing, and that we're going to not pierce the bubble very much. In terms of people coming to campus, we're kind of moved away that we won't have visitors. We will have guests. So, people who are invited to campus will invite guests, and the host will be responsible for keeping track of them and who they might contact. But, there'll be reasons to have guests, and there's ways to invite a guest and have a safe interaction. But that's going to be one of the grand challenges. Is it's going to be a bit locked down. And it didn't help that we lost our athletic season, which
Right.
can be a thing to draw people to campus, and a place where you can blow off steam. So last hour there was a chapel talk from the Dean of Students office talking about the ways that they've been talking with students to find alternative ways to blow off steam. Last week someone suggested to me we close the mall, and that the mall just become a giant playground, bikes littered around and skateboards, whatever you need to do to get your energies out. I also said I really want the cricket match to come back, because those things can last for days. So we'll come up with some alternatives. I hope that they are alternatives, because we're asking students to make a great sacrifice. So we also have to give them a good experience. It can't be like a prison camp. So I don't know, David. We'll just have to watch and see.
Good luck. Well, just one other question. You canceled the football season. What about theater productions, concerts, and those sorts of things? Have those gone too?
It's a mix. The the auditions for the first play were announced earlier this week. It is not a traditional play. It's a kind of a multimedia piece, but there are both online and in-person auditions the first week of class. So at least for the first role, the first play, it's going to be different. Concerts are really tough. We will have some online. We have an online speaker series. I suspect that we'll get to the place where we'll have a Glee Club concert, but the form that it takes is unclear right now. So it is one of the big things that we're going to lose are a lot of the cultural activities that we offer. But it turns out that the Ball Theater, many of you may have been there to see a play or two. It holds over 400 people. If you mark it off with rigorous 6-foot distancing, I think the capacity goes down to 70 people. It just doesn't, it hardly works. So if we did, it would probably be just for students to come.
Assuming that football does come back next fall, where are the visitors going to sit if they don't have stands?
So what we'll do is we'll just bring in temporary stands, just like, we'll just put bleachers on that side. So we'll put some bleachers on that side that will only minimally obstruct the view. And then when the season's done, we'll take those out. So, and there still remains a possibility. There are conversations. We'll see if this is feasible. There's conversations about having a spring football season if things would get back. It's logistically more challenging for other institutions that are run both a men's sports program and a women's sports program. But there's certainly is being discussed right now of how that might happen.
Are the anonymous alums that provided the money for that project dealing with the fact that their beautiful new stadium is not going to be able to be used this fall?
Yeah, that's a great question. So perhaps not surprisingly, if you make an anonymous multi-million-dollar donation, you're a generous person. And they were very generous. In fact, they reached out through their representative before the conversation had even concluded about the sports season. They saw the writing on the wall, and their representative communicated to me they have no problem if we cancel the season. They built the stadium to be there for 50 years. If it's 49, they're okay. So that was lucky. That was not really news a new president wanted to have to deliver to an unhappy donor, but we right now have very satisfied donors.
You mentioned fundraising. What is that going to do, or what's that going to be like in a COVID environment? Are you going to do it all remotely? I mean, fundraising is a face-to-face, slap them on the shoulder kind of thing, and that's tough to do now.
Yeah, both fundraising and admissions, especially at Wabash College, are one-on-one, face-to-face operations. So we've pivoted both. We pivoted the admissions operation back in March and had students visiting virtual classrooms, taking virtual tours, doing a lot of conversations like this. And we're actually, we had a pretty good year. We have about 260 new students to arrive next Friday. So we're actually up. And on the philanthropy, we also had to pivot. We canceled so many events in May and June. June is our annual Big Bash where we bring back a lot of alums, and it's a big deal. We had to cancel that. Somehow we ended our June 30th fiscal year with the largest annual fund in the history of the college and the largest total giving in the history of the college. So philanthropically, people's generosity has maintained. You're right, the teams have had to change. So, the folks who work over on the engagement side, they do a lot more Zoom cocktail hours with people, bringing together small groups, because we're just not traveling. I mean, we've got a big group of people who would be traveling every single week, and they're just doing it all like this. What we've found is that during the pandemic, actually, people do they like it if you check in with them, and they like to check in on the status of Wabash College. So people answer our phone calls, people take our Zoom calls. Somebody told me, everybody will take the call if they want to find out how the football stadium's coming. So we've continued to engage those folks, and right now we're still we have raised $194 million in our Giant Steps campaign towards a goal of $225 million. So we remain right on pace for that. It's different, but it can still be good. I think that's kind of what we just say a lot. It's going to be different, but it can still be good. And especially young people make a distinction. Personal doesn't have to be face-to-face for a younger person. It's more the attention you give them is what defines the personal touch than the handshake. And so we're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Any other questions out there? If not, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say one last thing. I got to give a shout out to our Montgomery County Health Department. So hopefully you've been following their great work. But because of where I sit, I speak every week with probably 50 college presidents through the different consortia that we're on. And I'm telling you, there is not a small college in the Midwest that has as good a support from their local county health department. Dr. Douglas and Dr. Roberts have been exceptional. And I really think it's fair to say we would not be reopening if we didn't have those two as our county health officers. So if you hear anybody out there that complains about our county health officer, you should really set them straight, because I'm telling you, there is no better pair in the business. And Amber and the whole team over there, just fantastic. And they've come in, consulted on the dining with us. Scott and John have been the part of the architects of building everything that we've done here in terms of creating a healthy campus. And those two are working a lot of hours for our community. And a lot of it's not being seen. And at some point, we as a community need to figure out a way to recognize their exceptional service during this period.
I think that's well said. Dr. Douglas was our speaker last week.
Oh, okay.
He gave us a pretty detailed picture about what the county has done to prepare for it and how we've responded. So I think we all appreciate what they do, and we echo what you just said. Are there any other questions for President Feller? Hearing none, I will bring the meeting to a close. Next week's speaker.
Jerry, your sound went down quite a bit again.
Am I back now?
No.
That's the second time that's happened. I'm not sure what's going on with my connection. Can you hear me?
No, it's still down.
About now.
No better.
Oh, all right.
There.
Now it's up again.
There is no rhyme or reason to this whatsoever. Anyway, before I drop out again, next week's speaker is going to be a mystery guest because we haven't determined who it is yet. So, as I said at the very beginning, if you have any ideas, please reach out to me or Gary. and I'm sure we'll have someone. A closing thought for the day is you're never too important to be nice to people. And on that note, remember to mask up when you're out in the stores and out in public. Take care of the others so that they can take care of you. I'll let the